we were sitting there going, this is great. And then on the 7th of February 2020, we woke up, trans activists found it. I didn't even know that was a thing. Did they have a problem with the AI? Yes. Because the whole thing was, how can you tell if someone's male or female? Just the stupidest question you could be asked. I had no idea who I was dealing with. Now I can look back and go, that was like a really sociopathic situation. Men saying that they are women is actually incredibly harmful to women. He's wrong. He's delusional. I think that is evil. I think they are the people who should be sued.
I just can't believe we've gotten to this point.
I just removed a man from the app, basically. When he became someone of note in my life was in October 2021. He called and texted my phone.
If you win this case, will it change everything?
Yeah.
What's Giggle?
Giggle is a social networking app exclusively for women. So my mum and I came up with the idea in 2018, 2019. And it stemmed from, I'd been in Hollywood as a screenwriter in the pre-Me Too era, and it's as bad as they say it is. It was a cesspool. I started with sexual harassment, escalated to quite a few instances of like full-blown sexual assault, attempted rape, and I just wanted to sell scripts. It was really bad. And on that, I didn't realize that I was actually being treated differently because I was a woman, but I was. There's not that many women screenwriters. When Me Too started happening, we all sort of started talking to each other and going, oh, it was happening to you too. So it's sort of isolation by design. And so, we were all internalizing it, thinking it's our own fault and, oh, am I not talented enough or whatever? No. It's just pure sexism. So I went back to Australia. I went to New York for a bit, then I went back to Australia, and I went into therapy to sort of try and recover from everything that had happened because I was a shell of a person. And in therapy, my therapist just sort of said this one sentence. It was this light bulb moment. She was like, you needed a really strong female support network in your life. And I was like, you're right. I did. I went through all these different ways where that would have helped. And so my mum and I were talking about it, like what I was recovering from in therapy, because as a mother, she felt like horrible of what I'd gone through. And one night, like I was having a whiskey, she was having a wine, and she went, why don't we create an app for women? Basically so they can have the female support network in the palm of their hand. But originally it was going to be just a roommate app because once I'd left Hollywood, I went to New York because I was like, I don't have to completely give up the dream, but I need to get out of Hollywood. There's still industry there. I can go and work there. And I had to go on to roommates.com and find a roommate, find a room to rent, which is a horribly depressing process, especially when you're like 32 at this point. And there's just messages from guys being like, you can walk around here naked if you you can live here rent free if you walk around naked, or do you want a boyfriend as well, or like lots of foot fetish stuff. Obviously, there's lots of good men out there, but then there's some where you're like, oh, I wouldn't have thought he would be like that. Yeah, no, it happens. Oh. Yeah, lots. Yeah, that's why we don't know which ones are the good ones and which ones are the bad ones. That's the whole point. We'll get more into that later.
So when I'm walking down the street, I feel a bit awkward. Mm-hmm. As well, because I feel like, I hope no one thinks that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then there are some guys who say, I deliberately do this or that, but I think that's creepy as well. So I just think, okay, there's nothing I can do.
Yeah.
Really.
No. Yeah. There you go. So those guys that do things on purpose that are creepy, yeah, they're messaging women on roommates.com saying you can walk around my house naked for free.
Oh,
yeah.
Everyone's so odd. Okay, so then you've made this finally a safe space for women.
Yeah, so basically it was going to be just a roommates app. And then because actually developing an app and like a startup in general, it's, you've got to get investment, it's got to be scalable, you got to see. And we were just like, well, actually there's lots of different areas where women would need a woman only app. We've sort of opened a Pandora's box, so to speak. Here. So we were like, what about, I'd done freelance writing, so I'd done freelance work. I was like, yep, I know that's shit there as well. And then we were lesbian dating. That's obviously a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Then it was just like sort of little different categories. It was like emotional support, from mothers, pregnancy, obviously. I mean, even places for like a woman to connect if they wanted a pen pal, travel, just anything. We also had like a Twitter style, like public forum that was female only, which that was the most interesting part because that's where everyone could just sort of talk and have public conversations. Everything else was like private connections. So we basically developed it. I sort of drew pictures of what it would look like. My dad helped with designers to make it into a real thing. We got the whole thing going, and it was actually very easy. We were sitting there going, wow, this is great. And then on the 7th of February, 2020, we woke up. We were doing beta testing on the App Store and Google Play. Security settings weren't properly in yet. It was still buggy, like it wasn't completely ready. A handful of women around the world knew about it. We were just ironing out bugs, seeing what worked. Trans activists found it. I didn't even know that was a thing.
And this was because you had an AI that could tell, it stopped men signing up.
Why? I don't know specifically what is the one reason that they came after it. I've got a few theories of it. So to make it female only, like when we were in early development, it was like, how would you make something female only? And we were just thinking of men in general. Like there wasn't a specific demographic of men we were thinking about. It was just, well, you know, if there's not gatekeeping, then it's not female only. So basically, we found out there was this software. Like I didn't design it or anything. I can't stress enough. I don't code. I struggle enough to talk about it. That basically it's just AI. It's just, it scans a selfie and says if it's male or female, and you can set it to different accuracies. It's got a liveness feature, so you can't do like a photo of a photo or anything. It can tell that it's a real instant photo. You can't do filters on it or anything. It's just, you know, like it's like an ugly selfie, you know, like the worst selfies you'd never publish. It's just one of those, but it just will say male or female. It's not perfect. That's why we would always have human eyes. The plan was, like, this is pre-launch, so the plan was, and what we eventually ended up doing, having human eyes behind the screens 24/7, because the good old-fashioned human eye can tell a male or a female. And so that's why when I found out about that technology in my pre-gender ideology days, I thought, well, this is totally non-controversial because we take a million selfies every day and we can tell who's male or female by looking at them. So this is like the least invasive way to do this. Like, we wanted, one of our other sort of things, we wanted to make sure there wasn't much data or anything we had to take from women to be able to use it. You could just, you know, sort of hop on. It was really seamless and go and be in a female-only environment, no matter where you were in the world, what you were doing in your day. Trans activists found it. Did they have a problem with the AI? Yes, because the whole thing was, how can you tell if someone's male or female? Just the stupidest question you could be asked. And I remember when this was all coming at me at first, like, you know, you just don't know. I had no idea who I was dealing with. Now I can look back and go, that was like a really sociopathic situation of just this attack, hounding you, asking you these questions and not accepting any answer that you give. So I kind of just shut down for a bit and went, I'm going to find out what's going on. Because they inundated us with 1-star reviews on the App Store and Google Play and put us into an algorithmic black hole. Like, I'm talking thousands, saying transphobic, this app is full of bugs, this app is racist, just anything they could say. And I mean, yeah, we could never get out of that. We were canceled right out of the gate, basically. All media and companies that were going to work with us to launch it never responded to an email again from those accusations of transphobia. I never had a right of reply. Nothing. Just completely destroyed the company in about 48 hours, or attempted to, because they didn't. But
it's such a bizarre thing, because I know there's a lot more complexity to all of this, but to grow up as a man, I just can't imagine like seeing a female-only space that's obviously there for their own security and thinking, I need to be in on this, and if I'm not in on this, I'm going to bring it down from the outside.
Yeah, completely. Like, I think of it like, it's different now, but Grindr was an example of an app that I would use during development. I didn't know that it had been captured by gender ideology because I didn't know what gender ideology was. I'd never heard of it.
What happened to Grindr, just for those who don't know?
So Grindr is a dating app for gay men, and it came out, I think it was 2010 it launched. It was one of sort of the first. And when it's like got a very specific purpose like this or a demographic, they're called niche social networks. So it's a niche social network. The lesbian dating app was the same. Now these two have both fallen to gender ideology, and now it's a free-for-all. But initially, like something like Grindr, it didn't need gatekeeping because women, you just stay. It would never occur to me to go on Grindr. It's like, oh, that's for gay men. Fantastic. I love that.
Yeah.
And you move on with your day. Like, oh, that's for lesbians. Cool. Like, J-Date. There's Christian Mingle. Like, there's been specific apps for specific groups or sites or whatever. There is actually right now in existence. You can look it up. Furzu.net, I think. It's a social networking platform exclusively for furries.
Oh, the people who dress up as animals and things.
Bang, yeah.
So imagine me trying to get in on that and say, no, as a non-furry, I want to. But then I guess they think that they are literally women. and there's nothing separating.
Well, furries don't think they're women.
Oh, no,
they think they're woodland animals.
Sorry, yeah, but for Giggle, of course.
Yeah.
But the Grindr thing that I guess recently I read, I think this was on Grindr. Now you can't filter for biological males anymore.
No, it's actually become quite homophobic, because this is what happens when gender ideology goes into something. It turns whatever that organization or institution or company was to the opposite. So like free speech companies, like organizations, become anti-free speech. Women, like feminist organizations, are anti-woman feminist. And like a gay male app is now, how dare you even think that there's such a thing as a gay male?
Wow.
Yeah, everything is just turned upside down. We're literally living in an upside down world.
It's a weird thing. There's a lesbian app as well where you can't now just get biological women there. You can't filter for that. That's her. So that you can't just do that. Absolutely mad. Yeah. Well, I mean, the AI, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
That you can use that to sort of look at people's faces and things and see who's who. I read that there maybe were some issues with it though. Were there issues sort of with some black people? Or,
once upon a time, like in like the even earlier days of AI, when they were still ironing out bugs, I think there were. But I'm talking like 2015, 16.
Okay.
So by the time we were using it, no. And then even by now, like when we were first doing testing on it, this is like end of 2019, early 2020. You think of where AI is now. So it is coming along in leaps and bounds. I wouldn't have used something if it was like racist. Like it was for women. It was just, the whole thing was to make sure women felt comfortable.
But it could be inadvertently racist.
Well,
it could, like,
the only way, I'll tell you how it was. Really pale skin women who took a selfie with a white wall in the background, sometimes it would think that it was a photo of a photo because there's no depth of field. It's not pixelated enough.
Yeah.
So if you want to make a racism claim based on that, then yes.
Yeah.
But it was rare that happened. But that was the one thing. Whenever we'd be getting the racism claims, I'd be going, no, this is not this. And I just find it really horrible to say use women of color as a tool in an attempt to attack other people. It's putting them down. I will defend them. No, I would never do anything like that. And women of all different races and ethnicities were welcome on the app, and we're using the app. It's just nonsense to say anything else.
So tell me, what's going on now with this court case?
Okay, so in 2021, a man onboarded Giggle and he got on. Now, that was not something that was like an event in any way, shape, or form. Because so with the AI, we had it set to 94% accuracy. We had done testing and seen that 94% accuracy meant no woman got rejected unless it was like that pixelated or blurry thing, like as I was saying. And occasionally a man would get on, but rightly or wrongly, we made the decision that we didn't want any barriers for women, and we would just remove a man if he got on. Simple as that. So this particular man did get on. I don't remember removing him because, as I said, it wasn't an event. Like I removed many men, and like the AI overall worked, especially when we were under attack and there was like thousands of men an hour trying to get on. Because sometimes they did go through, like they would go viral on Twitter or like Twitch, whatever those gaming things are. They'd be taking the selfie and leaving reviews, and this would happen like once a month, every 6 weeks. It was like always intense, and you'd have to be there for like 48 hours, survive the attack, whatnot. So I don't remember doing it, but it would have been me. I just removed a man from the app, basically. When he became someone of note in my life was in October 2021. He called and texted my phone, and it was something to the effect of like, hi, I'm trying to get onto the app. I don't remember if he said that he had a gender identity then. I don't recall. But because the only data that we had for a user was their phone number, because that's like the anchor that anchors a user to the app, so the app would work. Like everyone has to have something, whether it's email or phone number. So I just typed the phone number into the Giggle server, and I saw a picture of a man, and I was like, that's a man. I called my dad, and I said, there's this guy. He's called and texted my phone. I'm a bit freaked out. No one else had ever done that. So we'd always be under attack and everything, but no one had ever called and texted my phone. And my dad said to me, block his number, forget about it, and don't tell your mother. Because my mum sees all the death threats that women get constantly. She lives in fear a bit. She's a protective, good mum. So I did that. I didn't tell mum. I just tried to like forget about it. It did freak me out. And then on the 20th of January 2022, I got an Australian Human Rights Commission complaint for gender identity discrimination from this person, Roxy Tickle.
Roxy Tickle's the username.
Roxy Tickle's his legal name.
Roxy Tickle's his legal name.
Roxanne Tickle, yeah.
For God's sake.
My last name is Grover, so I'll defend him on this one thing. Last name.
But Tickle's not the real name, is it?
Yeah. And my last name is actually like a Muppet. So like sometimes we all just have ridiculous names.
Tickle's just, but you don't know that. He might have chosen that.
Yeah, I don't know.
There is the Thick of It episode, you know?
Yeah.
Tickle,
Yes,
Mr.
yes,
Tickle.
I've heard of this.
So, okay, people are called that, and they were saying, no, it's Tickle. But
Yeah,
okay, Tickle, Roxanne Tickle, because let's be honest, that sounds like a porn star name.
Well, that's why, like, if I'd known if it's maybe he said his name when he texted me, I'm not sure, but like he could have, but I just feel like I would have remembered it.
Mm-hmm.
Tickle, Roxanne Tickle or Roxy Tickle's a memorable name. It's not like John Smith. Like you hear it and you go, I'm never going to forget that name. I surely am not going to now.
But the issue is, I guess, a lot of trans people are very serious about what they're doing, but some appear to have a fetish, which AGP, autogynephilia. And somebody who gives themselves some kind of stage name like that and then expects to be welcome onto a women's only safe space app seems just bonkers.
I mean, I don't think any of them are that serious, to be honest.
Well, who knows? You know, it's such a complex thing. None of us know how it works.
No, look, I mean, I don't want anyone to be in distress with their body or anything, but I think that's what you should go and get fixed and learn to accept the reality of who you are and that what things can't change. I think that would be a really healthy way of helping anybody who had any sort of distress about who they are, not lying to them and then trying to force everyone else in on the lie. That's just not something it's not working, is it? And it's not sustainable.
No, I agree. And I'm not sure that I believe that that you can be, I don't even know if that's necessarily a thing, but there's also got to be a differentiation when we talk about them between those who are sincere and who genuinely believe they are this, they are a woman and they want to be a woman in whatever that means to them, even if we don't agree with that. And then some of them who are like, I'm having a porn star name and I want to go in a women's app. I
mean, I agree with you in the sense of like anyone can believe whatever they want about themselves. You can believe that you're like the spaghetti monster.
Sure.
Like, fine. But, how seriously or sincerely do I have to take that belief? Because it's a thing of be kind. It's like when I realized that we were being told to be kind, but it was at the expense of cruelty to women. So men saying that they are women is actually like incredibly harmful to women, as we're seeing. So I don't really care how sincerely a guy thinks it. He's wrong. He's delusional. And he's welcome to think it. And if it makes him get out of bed every morning and live his best life, okay. But the moment he's trying to make me or anyone else believe it, we've got a problem. And that's the situation that we're in. So I just think that when we're trying to extend that sincerity or kindness, let's not forget women in that equation, because that's the problem, is that we're being forgotten about. And here we are, we're like fighting tooth and nail for our rights to just literally be a legal sex class in law that men cannot identify into.
Do you feel like some of the ridiculousness of some of the trans rights activism has actually pushed you further away from, because the initial Giggle, I remember I think it was the FAQ, frequently asked questions, said, we accept trans people.
Females with a trans identity were always welcome. So when we were being called transphobic, it was like, but no one has stopped to think of females with a trans identity.
Sure.
Because if there's a female, am I supposed to know that she actually thinks of herself as a cloud gender? I don't care.
Are they still allowed then, biological women who believe that they're men? Although why would they want to be in it?
I've talked to a few, because there's sort of quite a few gender critical women who believe themselves to be men, or, I think they're coming back to the other side now, but whatever language you want to use there. They were like, cool, thanks. I mean, they're like, I'd sort of stay away from it, but it's nice to know that if there was a place there, like if I needed it, I could use it. There are some women in certain parts of the world where being sort of sex non-conforming, so sort of being very much like the tomboy, or I have to say toy boy, no, tomboy.
That's Roxy. Roxy Tickle, the toy boy.
But, being like a tomboy or just, sort of like, or a butch lesbian or something is beyond frowned upon, like they're sort of shunned. And so they did come on Giggle and they sort of found each other and would talk. So Like, great. Like, I didn't ask if they had a gender identity. I don't care. It's literally the only prerequisite to use the app was to be female. So whenever anyone is coming at me, it's like about transphobia. They're not thinking about females with a trans identity. I am.
How is this being upheld then by the court? Like, tell me how, because I'm a bit of a novice with the whole court stuff.
Well, so am I. I'm still like, every day my mind gets absolutely blown because I'll preface everything I'm saying is I'm not a lawyer. I've had to learn this along the way and be like, you're kidding me.
Yeah.
So basically, well, I got the Australian Human Rights Commission complaint, and I very much what my instinct is that from the beginning, they were treating me as if I was guilty, no discussion, like, you have to do what we say. And I was going, I have done nothing wrong. This person is a man. He can think whatever he wants about himself, but that's really the beginning and end all of it for me. Like, I wish him all the best.
Sure.
But so I got a solicitor. We went back and forth. In the Australian Human Rights Commission, that's where you can settle an issue. Like, so someone's made a complaint and you can settle it before it escalates to court. And you go to what's called conciliation, which is kind of like a mediation or something. But for me to settle it in the Australian Human Rights Commission, I would have had to let him on the app, let all men who claim to be women on the app, go to sex and gender education, and moderate the content of the app so not to offend men who claim to be women.
Okay.
And I was just like, no,
yeah,
I'm not going to agree to any of that. And when the week I got the Australian Human Rights Commission complaint, I was 15 weeks pregnant at that time. So as we were going back and forth, I was just getting more and more stressed. This is just hell. And by the time it would have come time to that sort of conciliation thing, I was like, no, I don't want to put myself through this. I'm not going to agree to anything. There is no point. I'm not going to agree to it.
Sex and gender education.
It could only be re-education because I'm at this point, like, while say 2019, I had no concept of sex and gender or like of this conflict or there being a thing of gender identity. Now I have spent 24/7 for 4 years studying it. I could teach the class.
Yeah.
And I could definitely do a better job than the people who are currently
teaching it. Well, they'd be teaching something else, presumably.
I mean, they're just teaching that, your gender identity is more important than sex and that everyone has a gender identity. Like, I don't have a gender identity.
No, I don't have one.
Yeah, in a way, I kind of do wish that I'd gone to the gender identity course just to take notes and expose it, but it was just not the time. As I said, pregnant, that was priority for me.
You know what though, like with the court cases and stuff, we often hear about like, oh yeah, this person wanted to sue me or whatever it is, but we don't think about the actual moment you get like that letter or you get an email. You like you're stuck, because I've had a couple of those. Your stomach just turns in knots, doesn't it? Like
just takes your breath away. Hairs on the back of your neck stand up. You just in some way life's going to be different, if not forever, but for a portion of time. When the litigation part of it started, my solicitor said, by the end of this, you will never want to do litigation again. I was like, well, I'm in day 3 and I never want to do it again. Yeesh. It definitely hasn't gotten better than it was then. But so because I declined conciliation, he could then take it to the federal court. So you have 60 days to be able to do that. He did it. He filed in federal court on the 60th day. I got a barrister. We were getting ready to do the first response to it. And then he withdrew. And we were utterly shocked. My mum and I were putting together baby furniture in my little girl's room. I was like, I think I was a week away from giving birth at this point. And I was like, it's over. Like, is that it? Did we just stand our ground and we can move on with our lives now? So then basically, just to put some things in context, that was July 2022. My daughter was born in August 2022. We actually made the decision to take the app off the App Store and Google Play. It wasn't connected to any of this. We'd spent all this time treading water. Technology changes. We had to do updates. We're in a shoestring startup budget. We're not Elon. We can't do a huge new build while simultaneously running it. So we were like, okay, we'll take it offline, do the new build, launch it, have more control over it. Hopefully we're in a different position. It'll all be great. Before we could launch it, he refiled in federal court on that same claim. Oh. So now he was what's called like 260 days out of time. So he actually had to get permission from the federal court for it to go ahead. So I got served. Oh, no, sorry, I didn't get served. I found out about it on New Year's Eve 2022 because the Guardian newspaper wrote the one article they've ever written about it, just saying Roxanne Tickle's taking Giggle to court. And everyone was sending me the article going, you're going back to court. I'm like, what? I hadn't been served yet. But I got served like 2 weeks later. Barristers and solicitors started working on everything. Then in April last year, case management hearing, the judge allowed it to go ahead because it's in the public interest. And he's right. It is in the public interest. And there's a reason for that. The law, what you were saying before, how does this law work? Okay, so I did not know this. But so Australia has the Sex Discrimination Act. And it was put into law in 1984, which is going to be a date that you go, how convenient, what a coincidence of all the years when you hear more of this story. So the Sex Discrimination Act was obviously for biological sex. It's for women and girls primarily, and all was going great. Our Sex Discrimination Act is based on CEDAW, which is the Convention of the Elimination of all forms of discrimination against women. It is a UN convention signed by 189 countries around the world, the UK being one of them. Mm-hmm. It is essentially an international Bill of Rights for women. It is what a lot of our laws, our sex discrimination laws, are based on, yours included. The UK Parliament has ratified CEDAW. But what's unique about Australia is that we incorporated it into our law basically in full. Our Sex Discrimination Act is CEDAW. So we are in a very good position to defend CEDAW, Australia and New Zealand, actually. So CEDAW is biological. Our Sex Discrimination Act is biological. But in 2013, under Australia's first female Prime Minister...
Oh, women.
I'll never get over it. Under the Gillard government, they brought in these amendments where they took out the definition of sex and man and woman, and they put in gender identity. And they gave it a definition, but it's something to the effect of gender identity is gender identity. Like something about mannerisms. It's like nothing.
It doesn't make sense.
It
was she quite woke? Was she woke prime minister?
Apparently. I mean, even now, I would have so much respect for her if she turned around now and went, "Oh God, I'm really sorry, I got that wrong. I just didn't think it through, or I wasn't really aware of it. It was just under my government. I'll help you fix it." I'd have a lot of respect for that. I like people who can admit they got something wrong. No, she has. There's been a few instances where she has talked about it. I think it's a no-go zone now. I don't think she'd go to any event where there's a possibility she'd be asked about it. But She has said, a woman is anyone who thinks they're a woman. And you're like, you have dined out on your misogyny speech for 10 years. If anyone can identify as a woman, you being Australia's first woman prime minister is not even an achievement. Any one of them could just identify as it. Makes me so angry.
Yeah.
So
you got that New Zealand woman, Jacinda something.
Yeah, she's the same.
Right. There's a Scottish woman. What's her name?
Nicola Sturgeon.
Yeah. It's turkeys voting for Christmas.
Yeah. I've got lots of theories about it. I think that there's a certain type of woman that once she gets into that sort of position of power, doesn't want anyone to sort of know she's a woman almost at that point. You know what I mean? Doesn't want attention brought to it. And so quite happy to throw other women under the bus. Like, I'm the one that got here. Don't bring attention to the fact I'm a woman. Don't make me seem vulnerable or whatever it is. Yeah.
Where would Thatcher stand on this?
I think she was probably sensible on this issue. I'm not sure. I don't know British politics as well. But a lot of my information of Margaret Thatcher is through like Meryl Streep.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm not as political. Well, I wasn't as political as I've sort of become now.
Yeah.
But so basically they muddled our Sex Discrimination Act. And so what is it? Is it sex? Is it gender identity? No one knows because it hasn't been challenged. So suddenly this case came along, and while it's seemingly just a case about some guy wanting to get on a little app that was floundering at best, it has become this case that is the first case in the world to directly tackle what is a woman and sex versus gender identity, and why it is so important globally is because of CEDAW. We're in this actual position to defend women's rights internationally. I just wanted to create an app. So this is not what I signed up for, but that's
when will this all be decided?
Well, the first hearing for it, the only hearing, is in 2 weeks on April 9th to the 12th. There won't be a verdict for a while. Like they take their time with that.
Weeks or months or years?
Months, like mid-year.
Okay. And
just
then,
after mid-year, yeah.
And then we'll know basically in the Western world whether you're allowed to have a women's only space.
Yeah, well, basically whether women have rights in international law, whether we are a unique legal class of people who men cannot identify into. Basically, that's what we will find out.
I just can't believe we've gotten to this point. And
Same. How did they let it happen?
Do you ever wonder, like, if you're just very ideologically captured, and I'm also ideologically...
I wonder every day. I constantly go. I check in. Am I wrong?
Yeah.
Have I fallen down some sort of bizarre rabbit hole? And then I go, like, hang on, no. Men are not women. Like, this is, like, I say this all the time. This is crazier than flat earther stuff, because even like, well, one, those people aren't changing legislation, but as crazy as it is to even still think the earth is flat, at least at one point in human history, humans didn't know what shape the earth was, but they knew the difference between male and female. It is the most like simple, obvious fact that we know. Like Richard Dawkins has said, it's the uniqueness of it. It's the one thing that is binary. Pretty much everything else exists on a spectrum. What is so unique is you can't change sex and there's two options.
Neil deGrasse Tyson used that argument the other way. Have you heard him talk about the astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson?
Yeah, I know who he is.
He just went bananas.
No, he's like... sometimes when you go like, why are really smart people involved in this? You can find out if there's someone in their family that's transing their child.
Interesting. I think also, I mean, Neil deGrasse Tyson, I didn't even realize this, but he's had all sorts of allegations against him. And that he's had to, and this isn't me accusing him in case, again, I don't know the legal stuff, but he's talked about it publicly himself. I think 4 different women have come forward and accused Neil deGrasse Tyson. Then we have to sit there and listen to him to say stuff like, hey, a planet becomes a star at this point or that point, so there's nothing binary in the world, so men and women are also on a spectrum.
It's one of my actual theories, so it's like, not to talk about Neil deGrasse Tyson specifically, because I don't know
legally
him.
Not talking specifically about him, but metaphorically someone similar to him.
But just in general, like the Me Too movement was this global, like very grassroots movement of women that emerged very quickly, became very successful. And it was actually a movement about boundaries. It is no accident, in my opinion, that it just died and was replaced with gender identity ideology.
Yeah.
And I think that there is a lot of really powerful men who don't give a shit about trans rights, but they really love the fact that women are now not even real. They can't have boundaries, or they're a bigot. And we can't even really talk about anything else because we're just having to focus on this. And I think that was really convenient for a lot of men. It's like, I think as well that this dawned on me recently that I actually was in a really unique position in creating a female-only digital space. This is something I never thought of. But the other day, did you see the footage of the woman, the cleaner, who was being chased by a man who claims to be a woman because she told him to get out of the woman's bathroom, and he was berating her down the hallway of a hostel.
Yes.
And she had to lock herself in a room to try and get away from him. And as I was watching it, I was like, that is exactly what happens in real life women-only spaces. We remove ourselves. We're petrified. We see a man, and either we're petrified and something happens, or we just quietly get out as quickly as possible. But in a digital space, I had the power to remove them. I was like, I could safely remove them. It was a complete flip of the usual power dynamic. And I think that this court case is the result of what happens when that power dynamic is flipped, because I think that we're just sort of seeing the reality of sexism play out.
I like what you say about boundaries and power dynamics. And I'm going to go back to Neil deGrasse Tyson. And that's because I haven't spoken really about him before. And I really think this is a bad, in my opinion, person. And I've never invited him on the show. Not that he'd necessarily come on. But the boundaries issue that he has is not only with women. I think it's everyone in his life, because have you seen him be interviewed by like Joe Rogan and people like that? He just interrupts and interrupts so frustratingly. He has no concept of boundaries. And I think, in my opinion, he really is quite a bully.
Yeah, I mean, probably.
And it's people having issues with boundaries. And I think most men, or I'd like to think most men, are quite happy with this idea. Like, okay, well, women feel a bit better over there. I don't really need to put myself in that position.
Oh, completely. Like, the reality is, if most men in the world didn't respect women and like respect our boundaries and treat women well and like say like not rape and all of that kind of stuff, like society would be in decay. Like, obviously most men are really good. It's like most people are actually really good.
Yes.
But female-only spaces exist because of the bad men. So the moment you've got a man trying to come into one, you're dealing with a guy that doesn't respect boundaries. Like, that's on a personal level with the Tickle v. Giggle case. Like, I've said no to this guy. It's as simple as that. I've said no.
Yeah.
Please respect that I have said no. I have said numerous times, you are welcome to believe whatever you want about yourself. I wish you well. Have a nice life. And under no circumstances does it make any difference in his life whether he is on this app or not. But it makes a lot of difference to women's lives if we have female-only spaces available to us.
What does he want to do in there? I just, what annoys me is, like, I used to live in Berlin, and Berlin's one of the sort of most hipster places, and you're going to get a lot of woke people there. And it's perfectly acceptable in Berlin. If I wanted to go into some of the clubs there, not that I ever actually did want to do that, but Kit Kat Club, Bergheim, is that? So I don't even know the name. I think it is Bergheim. They wouldn't let me in because I don't look cool enough. Do you know what I mean? I wouldn't have like leather nipples or something.
How come? I mean, there was this like sort of they call it like this celebrity Tinder. It's called Rare. It's like a exclusive dating app. It was launched in LA, like in Hollywood. I don't want to brag. I was on it for a bit. I matched with Matthew Perry.
Did you? Oh,
but I never checked it, and so I didn't realize until months later. And I was like, "Oh, Chandler Bing."
And you didn't reply.
No. I ghosted Chandler.
It goes to Chandler, and then wow.
But that is an app where they literally judge you based on like how basically attractive and valuable they deem you to be.
Yeah.
And
no one cares. No one's suing that.
No.
Tell you what, if they didn't let me on there, I mean, I've not been single for 10 years, but if I were, I would tomorrow would try and sign up, and if they didn't, I would sue them. No, I wouldn't really.
No, but it's also like, in this whole process, the amount of times where I've had to justify female-only spaces, and women are having to do it all the time and bring up the most traumatic things that have ever happened to us to do it. But I'm like, we just want them. Like, that's a good enough reason for me. Obviously, in the court of law, it's not like you actually have to go through like equality and safety and privacy and all of these legal things. And that's fine, because if the law is working properly as it should, you need that. You need it's boundaries and everything, isn't it? And that's kind of how the law is supposed to work. But no one ever is asking anyone to justify OnlyFans. OnlyFans isn't like, they're not tearing that down. I wish OnlyFans didn't exist. I think it is horrible for society. I don't think it is great to offer young women the chance to make what is in reality probably for the most of them hardly any money by selling naked photos of themselves. I think it's just ridiculous. But I learned to coexist in a world where it exists. I'm not going to go and do anything to it. Why can't that happen for female-only spaces?
You exist in a society where not everything is exactly how you want it to be, without needing society to change around you. I think what a lot of these people get confused with is there is a difference when there are genuine civil rights issues, such as with gay people back in the day. Although now we even had that sort of cake issue here. I think that was in Ireland or in the UK, I'm not sure, where a baker was able to say, look, I don't want to make this. It's like you can't not serve a gay person cake, but you can say, I don't want to put something celebrating homosexuality on a cake.
Which I'm quite a free speech absolutist, so I'm kind of like, well, if they don't want to do that,
yeah, I feel that as well.
I do and I just think like there are other bakeries to go to. Like it's the same thing with this. While I'm not a free speech issue in this case, obviously, but there are other apps to go to. Like there are like 13 or 14 apps exclusively for trans and also the LGBTQI plus community on the App Store and Google Play. Plus, there's the furry social network. I suppose like there's lots of options here.
If there was a world where like almost none of the bakeries or the bakers would put the gay cake, then maybe that's where you need to have a sort of a civil rights issue.
Or you go, what an opportunity. Let's create a bakery that does.
I know loads of anti-Semitic people. My family's Jewish. And my attitude now towards them is just like, be anti-Semitic. You do your thing. As long as it doesn't get to a point, that's the thing, where like we're getting rounded up and put in trains. I just think like, good, you've got a right to be anti-Semitic if you want. Good luck to you. I mean, not public. You're not supposed to say anything
No,
violent
I mean,
or threatening.
But it's like people, like even just people could hate me. They have a right to hate me.
Yeah.
I can't do anything about it. For whatever reason it is, you don't think I should have rights. You don't like me. You don't want me to have any success, anything like that. Okay.
Yeah.
Fine. Like, it's just, we do all live in this colorful world together. And sometimes we go to like little refuges where it's just without tribe in a way that we're humans, we're tribal. Like, it is nice. Like, you know, lesbians do like to hang out just with lesbians occasionally. Women, like men like to hang out just with men, like even just like straight men. Like a night with the guys, it's different. When you've got a group of guys sitting there, what you guys talk about is different than if one woman was to sit at that table with you.
You know what is actually a difficult one? Because there was a theatre night in London recently that I don't know if it was black people only or no whites allowed. And I think that's the difference. If it was black people only, maybe that's okay.
Race, in lots of different ways, race is different to biological sex because the necessity of female-only spaces on the basis of sex, it does come down to safety, dignity, and privacy. That is like the legal threshold or definitions or whatever. And so they're really real reasons. And then you go, okay, like, so if you were to have, say, like a black-only thing, is that okay? Well, I mean, I don't have a problem with it. As I said, I'm like I just think fine. But then if you would then have a white-only thing, this is how I'll explain it. Okay. For male-only spaces, don't need as much protection in law because women self-exclude from them. So you can create a male-only gym, for example, quite easily because women will just sort of see this like really industrial place with giant men, heavy metal music, like this just pretty scary. And we go, I'm not going in there.
In general, not all women.
For the most part, you can pretty surely create that into a male-only space, right?
I used to play five-a-side football, and it wasn't a men-only play. Yeah. It was men, and women did often come.
Oh, yeah, but that's different. I'm just saying, but it is possible to create a place that's so intimidating that women will not go near it.
I'll just say they made it rubbish, though, because the women were not very good. In general, one or two were, but sorry.
Men and women are different in sport, too.
Yeah.
But then, so with a female-only space, the moment you create one, it's men want to come in. So that's why, like, even female-only gyms have always had to have, pretty strict, like, gatekeeping on them as well. Lesbian bars had to have a lot. Like, they used to always basically have giant male bouncers out the front to keep the men away. And so I think in terms of the race stuff, I think it's similar that, like, some races need the protection and then some other ones don't need the protection.
There's also like communities. It's such a complicated one, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really hard. But my thing is, I think about this a lot because you obviously don't want to go into a world of horrible segregation that we historically had. But I don't think female-only spaces have anything to do with that. Like, female-only spaces have emerged from history as something that is really, really positive. Obviously, you can have places like Saudi Arabia, with what they were locking women away and not allowing them into society. That's not a female-only space issue. That is a much bigger issue than female-only spaces. They still do need female-only bathrooms in those communities. We get, like, sort of, us women who are defending female-only spaces, quite often we get accused of saying that, we want like apartheid and segregation and whatnot. And it's like, that is such an insult to anyone who's ever lived or is still living in apartheid situations.
Oh, yeah.
We're not forcing women to go into female-only spaces. We're saying we want you to have the option to be able to go into female-only spaces. And I think that goes for everything. So if you want to have something there that's specifically by race or something specifically by sex or sexuality, there are options that is very different to a forced world.
Yeah. I think every kind of freedom comes down to freedom to and freedom from.
Yeah.
And what you've created gives women freedom from men impinging upon their freedom.
Yeah.
And what it does is it takes away men's freedom to enter that space. But just like, I've got to go in there now. I've got to put myself in every... Did you see how Pink News reported about Giggle? They were saying that the AI had failed to recognize trans women as if it wasn't by design.
No, the funniest thing about that, they actually did do an email question answer with me, and I hadn't said trans woman. I had said male. They said trans
and they've
women.
sort of said, I'm looking and it's, you say male, but it's failed to recognize these trans women who are clearly female.
I'm going, they're male. You went male, trans woman. No, they blocked me because when I corrected them, when that article came out, I responded and just said, put from my email, I put my actual answer. I said, I just said it doesn't allow males in. Because it's not like we allow males who don't have a gender identity. It's not like we allow males we like in there. Like my dad cannot use the app for the exact same reason Roxy Tickle can't use the app. They're male. It's not a character assessment. It's just you're male. It's for females. Like there are other apps you can use.
They were like, and Jenny is a trans woman who wasn't allowed in. It's so weird because obviously...
But they never talk about the trans men.
Well, no.
See, they're going after me for transphobia, but they never mention the trans men.
It's
Females with
it's
trans
the new
identity,
kind of
whatever.
transphobia. But like the old transphobia was literally having a problem with anybody who identifies as trans, which you've proven by having trans men or whatever, or women with trans issues into the app.
Yeah.
This is, you don't believe that trans women literally are women, and that's transphobia by the modern definition.
The definition of transphobia at this point is you don't adhere to gender ideology and you're not accepting men as women. They do not care about the women who are part of this movement. I can prove it. So in our case, for example, it's sex versus gender identity. Obviously, we're fighting for sex-based rights. Females with a trans identity also rely on their sex-based rights. It's how they play sport. Because as we were just saying before, men and women are different in sport. Females need our own sports categories. We cannot compete with the men 99.9% of the time.
Yeah, terrible sports.
One day you're going to have an actual athlete sitting here. I hope she just goes, boom.
I remember I did play, there was like, honestly, woman after woman came to the five-a-side and ruined the game because it made it almost 5 against 4.
No, totally, because you've got to change how you play as well because you don't want to break her or something. Yeah.
But then once one woman came who was like ridiculously good, and I was like on the floor trying to catch her, and then I was like, right, am I going easy on her? So I started going harder, and she was just escaping me every time, and I never played again.
Awesome. But basically, women rely on their sex-based rights to be able to play sport.
Sure.
Most females that have fallen into this trans. I don't want to say trans identity. I hate using this language at this point, but I'm like,
it's people just with dysphoria, isn't it?
I don't think they're people that are they're vulnerable people in a cult is what they are, most of them, especially the social contagion amongst females. Like, it's just, I can't use the language. With
females, I've been saying this more and more, and I'm going to keep saying it now because I've become obsessed with this idea. But I did, the first documentary I did was about Exorcism in Argentina. And it was the patterns with early onset gender dysphoria that young women go through. Over there, that's not a thing, dysphoria and trans. Trans is a thing, but not in that way. So there, it's instead of like the gendered soul inside me, it's I've got a demon inside me. And they go through exactly the same pattern psychologically, and they have an exorcism. So it's the same thing over there.
Yeah, just a bit culturally different.
It's just people needing control at a very difficult adolescent stage of their life.
Yeah, no, completely. But with the law, if gender identity was to supersede sex in law, literally the only demographic that's going to benefit from that is men who claim to be women, because then they get the privileges of going into female spaces in sports. But females with a trans identity would actually then not be able to be in female sports. They'd have to go into male, so they don't have any opportunities anymore. They're also in danger in male-only spaces. And then you've got the neo-genders. Like, where do the non-binaries go? Where do the cloud genders go? The astrogenders, the gender fucks.
Astrogenders?
Oh, all of those stupid neo-genders where, like, you can be gender fluid, gender, just make up the cloud gender is the one I always use because I just think it's so ridiculous. Imagine telling someone I'm a cloud gender.
So you identify as a cloud?
I have no idea.
Like a bit of sort of water comes up from the ocean and later comes down as, that's the kind of mood I am.
I have no idea. But they rely on their sex-based rights.
Have you heard what Neil deGrasse Tyson suggests? I'm obsessed today with him. His suggestion was sports, just proved he's never done sports in his life. But it was just, the idea was, and I've heard a lot of people say this in the trans activist area, that it just has to all be done by weight now.
Yeah.
So a woman who weighs the same as a man, and so but that doesn't take into account. Firstly, you can't have like football like that. There'd be like 10 different.
Have you ever heard of that thing of like an idiot's version of a smart person?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, that's Neil
deGrasse Tyson. No, but I think it's also people who are just incredibly smart in one area.
Yeah.
And they think, well, I must be smart in every area. What you need is people like me who are stupid in all the areas equally.
And as we were saying before, like checking in all the time, going like, am I wrong? I don't go into it going, am I right about this? I go, am I wrong? Like, what have I gotten wrong? I'm always just checking to make sure. And I've been at this for 4 and a bit years now. I have not seen one shred of evidence that I am wrong. It's just men claiming to be women Men cannot be women. Women is a sex-based term. It's adult human female. It's got nothing to do with even gender. This is all nonsense, made up crap. And they put it into legislation and they shouldn't have.
Yeah.
They weren't allowed to because for my case, CDAW is a document on biological sex, and having gender identity in there means you are in breach of CDAW. It's got to go.
Do you think it will? I mean, do you feel confident?
Some days I feel confident, and then other days I just am having a nervous breakdown because I don't know how.
What happens if you lose?
We go to the High Court. We'll appeal to the High Court. So basically, in Australia, the High Court is a court of appeal, and you it's an error in law court. So we would be appealing, going, an error in law has happened because biological sex is not being given any weight or substance in the Sex Discrimination Act. So we'd have a pretty strong argument to go there. And then the other side would, if we were to win in federal court and they wanted to appeal, it would pretty much be the same thing. They'd be going, well, sex has been given weight, but is that an error?
Oh my gosh.
I would say it's an error for us because the Sex Discrimination Act, of course, it has to mean sex, like biological sex. There's no other kind. They're trying to do this thing called legal sex. That's legal sex is gender ideology, where it's your legal sex is what matters. So if all of these people are just changing their sex marker on their birth certificate, but again, if you were just changing your sex marker on your birth certificate, your legal sex is going to be the opposite of your biological sex. So the conflict is there. It's not solved at all. So legal sex just becomes a conflict. Instead of between gender identity and sex, it becomes legal sex versus biological sex. And if legal sex is not based on biological sex, why are you even calling it sex? Other than to confuse everybody and make it seem like you're not doing anything sinister.
Maya Forstater lost her initial one, didn't she? Have you sort of looked at how that went? Are there similarities in your case?
I spoke to her the other night and I'm having drinks with her tonight.
So, oh, lovely. Say hi from me.
I will. No, I'm very excited. I've spoken to her a lot about it and just how to deal with it. But yeah, no, so she lost in the federal, well, not in her tribunal. Hers was a tribunal. And then on appeal was able to go, and that's what changed the law. That's basically a Tickle v. Giggle thing. If we were to go to the High Court, there is a huge chance this case will end up in the High Court, which is another $500,000 I'll have to raise to pay for the damn thing. It is just there. It's just talking about the law at that point, the Sex Discrimination Act, should they be there, and it basically going this is in breach of CDAW and this is why, blah, blah, blah. It's a much simpler case. In federal court, our case, it's the he said, she said, it's did she do gender identity discrimination? There's no definitions that exist in the act. So no one knows who anyone's talking about. Are you talking about male women or female women? Who knows?
It just depends if you get a woke judge. That's it, isn't it? And that's how Maya lost the first time around. She was called a bigot for not believing that people can change it. I just cannot believe the wild hysteria that's taken over the entire world. This failure to understand as well that, yes, it's a nice idea because you're helping maybe people who seem vulnerable and you're saying, yes, you can be what you want to be. But that, as cruel to be kind. You've got to say, hey, no, nice idea if you want, but this is why you can't do it and this is why it's not true.
Well, that's the thing. I actually don't think it's even kind to indulge the lie.
No.
To people. I mean, we've all sort of thought ridiculous things about ourselves to get ourselves out of bed in the morning as we've gone through life. When you can be sitting there in a particularly unsuccessful time in your life and what you've got to tell yourself to get up and you're like, I'm brilliant, I'm fantastic. And you are none of those things at that point. So, but it wouldn't be kind to, even in that situation, indulge someone's delusion and say that they're already successful when they're not. You're not helping them. You've got to you're supposed to push and encourage.
Cruel to be kind, isn't it? You've got to say, hey.
So it's how are you helping a man who claims to be distressed about his body by telling him he is a woman and then giving him drugs and performing surgeries on him that does not turn him into a woman? I think that is evil.
Yeah.
I think they are the people who should be sued.
Yeah, well, Tavistock's closed down. The NHS has now stopped giving puberty blockers to
in
kids.
Australia, in this insane bubble that I am living in there. So not only in our case, I didn't think the Australian Human Rights Commission has intervened as amicus curiae, and they've said human beings can change sex and blah blah blah. So it's just absolute nonsense. But then the media won't report on anything that's happening. There's no dissent. And the WPATH files came out, and then OzPath, which is the Australian one, just went no. Puberty blockers are totally fine. They saw the NHS, what was happening. No, all good. There's no problem here. In Australia, they're doubling down. They are trying to see this horrible experiment through to the end,
So
which is
happening.
petrifying.
still happening then? It's still going on in Australia?
Oh, yeah, we are about 5 years behind the UK, but our laws have already changed. So imagine how terrifying it is.
What does that mean, 5 years behind the UK?
Well, about 5 years ago, when not as many people were talking about it here, not as many people knew, not as much media engagement. Like the women who fought to get it to this point fought really, really hard. So we're doing that in Australia, but we're doing it with a fourth estate that won't engage. Here, you at least had that. You had a pretty healthy media.
Okay.
Even though it's quite, like, your media has always been notorious for being horrible.
Sure.
But I think in this case, it kind of helped because there was just at least some mainstream places that would take on the controversial subject.
Well, some of it's because of one of your fellas, Murdoch. As much as he deserves a lot of criticism over the years, that was one of the few maybe not lefty tabloids and TV stations and things who will push back here.
Yeah.
I don't want to give him too much credit.
No, I mean, a broken clock is right twice a day.
I think so. Gosh, and how's Giggle getting on now? Are people going...
it's a beautiful platform that exists on a server with no users because I can't launch it until after the court case.
Oh, so it's
down. It's completely down. It's been down since August 2020. As soon as we were getting ready to relaunch it, and he refiled, and to protect it, we've kept it offline. So, no, I mean, he's taken my job, my company.
Your job and company and rights to have a women's space was taken by Roxy Tickle.
Yeah. So, I mean, I say it all the time. The person being discriminated against here is me.
Yeah.
Everything. I remember we were saying before, everything's the opposite.
Jesus.
Yeah, I'm being discriminated against on the basis of sex, which all women are. The moment a man is claiming to be a woman, he is discriminating against women on the basis of sex. Men are not women. Go away.
Are you getting shit from Roxy Tickle still? Does he message and say things?
So I had when I got the Australian Human Rights Commission complaint, I actually went back and researched like who is this person, and I'd found that I'd had one interaction with him on Twitter, but I blocked him. I didn't know who he was. He was quite anonymous, I would say, on Twitter. But I block all trans activists, especially in 2021. This was pre-Elon days, and so because it was the one thing I had to be able to speak out, I wanted to protect it. And I didn't want them to suspend my account. So I would be very careful with my language. I think I still said trans women back then. Now I wouldn't. I just say men.
This is what I mean that you've been pushed away. Because if this hadn't happened the last few years, maybe you would have... I've seen surveys, for example, people have become less sympathetic towards trans people in the last 5-10 years in the UK because they're now being told trans women literally are women. Whereas 10 years ago, a lot of us were very much on side of you're probably getting a lot of abuse from people who don't like that you're doing a different thing and so on.
I sort of would reframe it. I think if there was a movement right now to accept men who wanted to wear dresses or makeup because they liked that, I'd be totally on board. I think that would be quite progressive and fine. So I still have no problem with that to a point, although the autogynephile stuff, once you see it, you can't unsee it. But just a thing of just basically any human can wear whatever they want. I think that's how it should be. That would be great. But so I'm still as accepting as that as I've always been, if not more. But I don't think there is such a thing as trans. I don't believe in the ideology at all. I think it's all nonsense. I've looked at all the evidence. I've observed it. None of this is real. Yeah. It's all made up. And so, I mean, it's not like there's, if 5 years ago, I would have been like, oh, they're quite nice. They can come on the app. No, they still wouldn't have been women. You're still just a man. That's what it comes down to. It's the freedom of belief of it. It's the categories of basic truth are so important because I just think if they can make us believe that men are women, they can make us believe anything. And that terrifies me because what's the next thing? What are they preparing now is the next thing? And then am I becoming a foil hat conspiracy theorist? I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be paranoid or scared. I want to live my life happily. I want everyone to be able to, but you've got to respect my rights as much as you have your rights.
Those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities.
And that really scares me. So I will fight for truth and reality. I think it's too important. Obviously I've come at this from female-only spaces, but my North Star in all of this is truth and reality. I can't let it go.
Yeah. Have you lost friends?
Yep.
Because of this? Mm-hmm. Not just in general.
No, I have lost friends specific to this.
What have they said? What's the worst one?
One said to me, I didn't know you were a bad person.
I didn't know you were a bad person.
Yeah, that's so dramatic. And I was like, I'm just saying men aren't women and that women deserve rights. But if you think that makes me a bad person, maybe it's best we're not friends. I didn't want that relationship for long. And it had been a long time, it had been a long friendship.
I had a friend the other day, similar long friendship. It was just really having a go like this. It's not okay, the things you're putting out, and there's a lot of vulnerable people. And it's like, you don't even know where to start with this because you want to be like, hang on. You want to like sit them down and do a Clockwork Orange with them and like keep the eyes open and be like, look, these are the vulnerable people, like the women in this. And I understand your point as well. So we need to sit down and talk about it. But to decide that just for some reason, and you're right, that just after the Me Too thing happened, like a year later, it was like, okay, but let's forget all of that. And now men can just do what they want to.
You know what's so crazy? It was the year I was developing the app. I didn't see the switch happen.
Oh my God.
Because I was sitting there in my little bubble trying to learn tech language because I was hearing coders talk and it was like they were talking in a completely alien language. So I was learning that world, and I was learning how to run a company and go from screenwriting to that. It was a huge transition, if you will. And I just missed it. Now I go, how on earth did I miss this?
But no one saw it coming.
But that's the thing. So in like Australian law, not knowing that a law has changed, like, or what a law is not a defense, because I didn't know about this. But I will say, in my defense, I don't think it would have been a rational thought to go, oh, should I just go and check in law to see if men are women?
Yeah.
Who would naturally have that thought? So, and when we were setting up the company, you're dealing with lawyers, like, we're talking women only. I mean, I don't know if they're thinking, oh, the male women, cool. I have no idea, because if you take out the definitions and you're obscuring language, how do we have conversations with this?
Well, it doesn't really matter that if you didn't know the law, because even if you did, and you do now, you don't want that for your app.
Yeah, I just want it to be female only. Like, I just didn't think it was going to be, that it'd be a little bit controversial. There's always those men that go like, oh, don't those women have enough?
Right.
There's always a few of them in every crowd, but that's fine. Like, who cares? Everyone
but not
can have their
from the
opinion.
angle of like, can't I come in because I am a woman even though I'm not?
I never saw this coming.
Oh my gosh.
It shocked the hell out of me.
You mentioned before the AGP autogynephilia thing, and it's hard to get away from, as you say, once you start to hear about it, once you start to look into that. It's a percentage. I don't think it's everyone, because I think there's autism, there's several other different things going on. There are young girls who don't know what to do with their bodies and things like that.
Yeah, it's definitely, trans is not one cohesive community at all. Like, there's nothing that a 14-year-old dysphoric girl has in common with an autogynephile 60-year-old. No.
I'll keep them away from.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean,
hence female-only spaces are necessary.
The autogynephiles, I mean, and by the way, I'm not saying stay away from all trans people. I'm saying the autogynephiles, I think, perhaps. One of the things discussed on the app there'd be sexuality on your app, there'd be periods. Yeah. I started realizing, because I was looking into, for a book I was writing about a totally different thing, the psychology of secrets and how people use secrets and things in different ways. And I looked into sharenters, which are parents who share their family, and they're obviously emotionally and morally compromised because they need to make money to support their family, but they use their kids and they give away all their kids' most precious moments, and their private and secret moments are given away. And there was one, I can't remember the name of the family right now, but one in particular who I think they were not doing too well anymore. It must be very stressful. Suddenly the money's not coming in anymore. And they started to notice that their child, who was like 13, was attracting a lot of attention when they put the child in all the thumbnails. And then they put out this video that became their most popular video of all time. It's millions and millions and millions of views. And that was so-and-so, the girl, gets her first period. And that's the thumbnail, the title. There's like her looking like sad on the, oh God, I've got my period. And there's got to be a reason. I can't believe that the most popular, that many women are. I mean, women might be interested. Oh, okay.
No,
that's
I
men.
can guarantee you that audience is not women.
That's men looking at that, and they're getting sort of. So there is some sort. As much as people want to say, oh, you're being, a bigot by suggesting that there's some sort of attraction going on here. There's a reason that certain men want to be involved in your app to find out about girls talking about the periods.
How gross do you want to go with the information I know from this?
Go on.
There are men who go into women's bathrooms and go into the period bin things and take them out.
Which again, most men,
they post about it on Reddit.
For most men, that would be like, the I'm a celebrity, get me out of here. They have to do the horrible things with the cockroach. For most men, that would be horrific.
For most women,
of course.
But this is like, this is disgusting. It's violating. This is not stunning and brave. No. This is not a civil rights movement. No. Everyone has been gaslit into thinking that this is purely because it's men who want to be women. The civil rights movement is not with the women who want to be men. it's just the only time they get any attention is when they're having a baby. It's the same old sexism. Nothing has changed. It's just wearing a different outfit. Literally nothing has changed. They're saying it's progress. Yes, it's regressive, but it's also just treading what it's doing. Nothing is going anywhere. We're distracting ourselves, having to waste our time with this stupidity when we could be doing so many more things if the adults in the room, like the Australian Human Rights Commission, actually went, you know what, you're right. Men aren't women. And yeah, we actually have rules of how laws are made in this country, and we can't just put gender identity in there because we want. If they did that, the rest of us could go and be focusing, I don't know, on getting girls an education in Afghanistan, because that's a sex-based oppression I'd really like to end. Like there's lots of other things we could be doing, but we have to protect our own rights as well, so that we know where it ends up when women aren't a protected sex class in law. For most of human history, we weren't even mentioned. And it's not great for women when we're not mentioned in law. So that's how important it is for women to be a sex class in law.
You know who says this is Caitlyn Jenner. And now Caitlyn Jenner's the wrong kind of trans person for these people.
Yeah, he should probably give back his Woman of the Year awards. If you want to become friends, start there.
Well, yeah, he got that for after running someone over, didn't he? Which
a woman.
Which Ricky Gervais said hasn't done much for myths about or stereotypes about women's driving.
Yeah, I mean, no, Caitlyn is quite good on the sports issue because he knows.
Yeah. Well, he was very good at sports.
Yeah, he knows that the difference between sports. Like, basically, on that issue, he's not an idiot. Like, great. And I hope he does really good work, and I hope he brings more attention to it. I would like it that he can wear whatever he wants and he can call himself whatever he wants, but I can't respect him fully until he says, no, I'm not a woman. I'm a man who likes to wear women's clothes. And then I go, okay.
I think he's gotten close to saying that.
It seems to be pretty close, but I'm like, get there and then I'll go, I respect that. Like I said, I have no problem with people admitting they were wrong. So it's like none of us are above falling for bullshit or like getting swept up in something. We've all done embarrassing things or, thought ridiculous things in our lives. So if people just, I won't hold it against anyone if they just go like, I got that really, really wrong. Let's like hear it. Like, I've seen the facts. Like it's like you don't just share my opinion because I'm not expressing an opinion. I'm just saying men are not women. It is a fact.
Maybe I'll be doing that in a year. Everything on this channel I got wrong. I was so wrong, particularly Sall Grover when she came on. Just terrible. The things she said.
She hated Neil deGrasse Tyson. I love him now.
I love Neil deGrasse Tyson and his idea of binary fish or moons and planets being on a spectrum. I love how he bullies and interrupts everyone all the time. Gosh.
No, that's it. I used to like, he was one of those guys where I sort of thought, oh, maybe he'll be really interesting and smart, but no.
Just bullies people.
Yeah.
That's what I can't I can handle listening to people on the other side, but when they just bully like a truck going over someone and they don't see themselves like that, they think they're the good guys. I just can't.
That's what trans activists are to us constantly. It's just protesting us. Like in Australia, for example, you can have trans only events. It's not a problem.
Right.
My lawyer explained it to me because I was like, how? How is this happening? She goes, because none of you want to go to them. You're self-excluding from them.
You should sue for not being allowed in.
No, because I couldn't do it with a straight face because I don't think two wrongs make a right. I actually think if you want to have trans-only events and however you're gatekeeping that, whatever your definitions are there, that's your decision. I wish you well. Create a trans-only app. Stay in it for all I care. Like, have fun. Just let women have female-only spaces and gay men. Yeah. And you know what? Like if men, just men in general, males want a male-only space for recreation and socializing, fine. As I said, we all exist here together. Let's just, sometimes we need a break.
Men do that. They go to the woods and do all this men stuff.
As I said, male-only space is a lot easier to just sort of make sure women don't go to. We just don't go to the woods.
If you win this case, will it change everything?
Yeah. It'll change a lot. Not overnight. What it does, it sets a precedent. So you need that. So we need to have CDAW defended to be made it clear that it is biological female. What the activists have done is they've hung around on the edges of it and lied, straight out lied to people that men are included as women in it. It's not. They're not at all. They're in sometime... let's say 10 years ago, I'm not sure the exact date. There was one of the documents was called the Yoga Carta Principles. And it's basically the minutes to a memo from a few human rights groups that met in Yogyakarta in Indonesia, and they did this, put this together, this memo about gender identity and sexual orientation, which they're in conflict. And it has been rejected by the UN. It is not ratified by signed by any of the countries of CEDAW. Like CEDAW's rejected it. It's got nothing to do, but they claim that it is. Like, the amount of times throughout this process where I've gone, so they just lied. And you go, I didn't know you could do that. I just trusted that everybody in those positions was doing everything right. Like, yeah, naive maybe, but I just thought that people were. But no, so basically they have lied. Once we have established and defended that CEDAW is biological sex, which it is, then, so I'll go first with Australia, how it would work. So it would mean that our Sex Discrimination Act is sex-based. Biological sex is the name of the game. We can have our female-only spaces, lesbian-only events, female-only sport. The precedent has been set. Now, of course, you can have mixed-sex spaces still. This is the thing. It's like you can go and create, you could market it however you want. You could go and create a woman plus trans woman only space. Nothing would stop you from doing that. It would just mean that female-only spaces could also exist, because that's the only one at the moment that can't. In terms of like the states in Australia, because a lot of the gender laws are by states, they would be in breach of Australian federal law. So we'd have to just do the work to go and get the people to undo them all. But they'd be in breach, so that would be fine. And then how it would fit in the international world. So you've got countries like the UK, Canada, which is, Tranada.
Is that right? They're really trans ideological in Canada.
Yeah, I would argue that Australia is more captured than Canada at this point, because at least in Canada they've got a political opposition really building.
Okay.
In Australia we don't. Our politicians for the most part are cowards, other than like Moira Deeming, Claire Chandler and Louise Elliot. The rest of them, Alex Antic as well, but the rest of them are basically, nonsense. But so we will have set the precedent, and so when they're wanting to do laws here and establish female-only spaces and establish woman as adult human female, they can cite Tickle v. Giggle as the one that defended CEDAW and where they've ratified CEDAW, and there you go.
So in that sense, Roxy Tickle could be responsible for actually bringing down the whole thing. By suing you, if you now win, he's brought the whole thing down.
Yeah. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes.
I love the idea that in history books in 100 years, I'll look back and it's like Roxy, Tickle versus Giggle.
I can't even believe it. It's so stupid. But yeah, no, it's the most ridiculous court case name for a really serious case. This is why. So in Australia, I'm like screaming from the rooftops going, this is really serious. This is it. And no media in Australia will speak to me. That's why I'm here.
You had to come all this way.
I had to get on a plane because I was going crazy. I was like, this case is costing $500,000. So I was like, we've raised just over half. And I was like, how am I going to raise the rest? Like, I need people to know about it so I can crowdfund it. And I kid you not, I contact journalists every day in Australia. Like, I think at this point for most of the journalists, my emails just go to spam. I think they've blocked me.
Is there no Australian me, Australian trigonometry, Australian Winston Marshall?
No, I think I might have to be it. I think, like you say, I'm going to have to create it.
Time to start.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, there is one guy that's sort of trying to, but I'll say it here. I've emailed him 4 times. So, yeah.
I've been watching the Australian Traitors.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting bunch.
Yeah, there's one the New Flesh podcast, that those 2 guys, they're really, really good. They're great. They're emerging. I actually want them to be bigger than what they are. I hope everyone should go and listen to them. They do really good podcasts. But in terms of mainstream legacy media in Australia, nothing. There was one article written, Claire Lehman from Quillette did an article last year about the Australian Human Rights Commission saying that human beings can change sex, that sex is not binary or exclusive to male or female, and that a man's desire to be pregnant is sufficient for him to be considered a woman in law. They have said this in the submission to our case.
Is Colin Wright not Australian? Swipe right.
No, he's American.
Not. Why did I think he was Australian?
No.
Maybe it's Quillette. It's part of Quillette. Is Claire Lehman? Is she Australian?
Yeah, so she is. Yeah, so she was really good. So she wrote that one article. But you would think that there would be like other people picking up, going, "I'm sorry, the Australian Human Rights Commission say what?" Because even if you were on the trans side of this, wouldn't you be writing, going, "Hey guys, we can change sex. It's in law. This, like, we've got it. like celebrate it. Like I find it so sinister. Why do they want no one to know about this?
Hushing it up. Well, they're saying they hushed up because they know it doesn't. It falls apart.
Because they know that once the public know that the government is saying human beings can change sex, how do they have trust in that government? Because that's my thing. I'm like, what's the next thing you're going to force me to believe?
Yeah.
So I think I know that that's why the censorship is happening. But nope, sorry, airplanes exist. I got on one and I came over here and I'm going to talk about it, and I will continue to talk about it because it's too important.
I imagine Australia is, from what you've told me about being 5 years behind, is a bit like Argentina, which is sort of my adopted country. I'm always there, where they're much more, the average person seems to be much kinder to the trans idea because they don't actually know what's being said. And when you actually say to them, no, but they're literally saying they are women, but they're not being informed that that's the conversation going on.
Yeah, because you can have a lot of people that just go like, I'm totally fine with men wearing dresses.
Yeah.
And you're like, that's what they're thinking. And so they think like, what are you horrible people doing
Yes.
to stop that? But it's like, no, I'm saying they can wear dresses. They just can't be women in law.
Billy Elliot's fine, but you're not actually changing the law.
Well, imagine that's why this ideology is so horrible, telling a little boy who loves ballet dancing that makes him a girl.
Well, his friend also dressed up as in his mum's clothes and makeup and stuff. But, you know, it was fine.
It's fun. It's little kids having fun.
Yeah.
We can't do that anymore because they'll come along and like block their puberty and remove their genitals.
Imagine if that was like the next part of Billy Elliot, because it
Billy
ends.
Elliot 2.
It ends with him doing like
puberty blockers.
Yeah, it ends with him doing like what's it called? Not Black Swan. What's it called? Swan Lake.
Yeah.
He's like doing that, and he's on the stage, and it's all great. But imagine if like there was an extra additional scene, and he gets taken to the doctor, and they cut off.
Yeah, that's the 2024.
The Billy Elliot where they invert his
the director's
penis.
cut. Yeah.
Yeah, Christ. How can people get hold of you and help and all these things?
Yeah, so as I said, we're crowdfunding it. We have to raise $500,000 because I have an amazing, brilliant legal team. The other side is pro bono. Now, pro bono, I probably wouldn't have even gotten pro bono legal defense in Australia because they're all captured. They're all social justice things now. So I don't think there would have been anyone offering me anything for free. Also, my legal team are all amazing women who understand this issue, and it's important to them as much as it is to me. They want their rights too. And I think that it's really important for women to get paid for their brilliant work. I don't think I could go out there and fight for women's rights and expect women to work for free. So I'm very, very happy to raise the money to pay them, but it is a full-time job that I don't get paid for to raise the money. My time will come. It's fine.
Okay.
But I have to raise $500,000 to fight for women's rights and say that a man is not a woman.
We'll put a link
in
the description. It's so funny to think of us because I have maybe an outdated idea. I've never been to Australia. Obviously, there's Melbourne and there's Sydney and there's all the cities and everything. But I imagine it almost like, I don't know, the Appalachian America kind of area. Do you know what I mean? Or this kind of
inner city, Sydney and Melbourne are all in on this, and Canberra actually, which is the capital city where Parliament, federal Parliament is. They're all in on this. No, out in like the real world. No.
Yeah.
Like I'm from the Gold Coast, which is like where the beautiful beaches are. And no, like maybe occasionally someone will go, oh, shouldn't you just be kind? And then you explain to them what they're actually being kind for.
No, why, mate?
Yeah. Yeah. And no, it's just because they're all just people who live in the real world. They're not
liberal elites.
Yeah, I always hate that.
I know.
I really don't like that. I don't think that helps.
But
I don't think labeling people with things helps unless they're like, the TERF thing, we've sort of embraced it and been like, fine, because that's actually what the suffragettes did. Suffragette was a slur when they a journalist at the Daily Mail coined it. And then they just were like, okay, well, we'll use it. And they named their newsletter the Suffragette.
But the liberal elites thing it's such a good pair of words because it encapsulates people with luxury beliefs. Like, of course, you believe this.
It's the luxury beliefs, I think, I think that cuts to the core of it better. It's just people who are able to have luxury beliefs. Like, lucky for you, go and have them. Do not force them on other people.
Who is a heretic you admire?
Okay. So I'm pretty cliched in the sense that, like, I came of age in the Christopher Hitchens era. Like, I love him. But I will say this. I think, we've been waiting for a long time of like, who's going to be the next Hitchens? And everyone was waiting for a man. I think it's Helen Joyce.
Oh.
I think she's the smartest woman in the world. I think she's the smartest person in the world. I think she's so brilliant, and how she is able to articulate sometimes really complicated ideas, but then other times really simple ones that have been made complicated, but how she's able to articulate it all in a lovely way. And she's got that beautiful like velvet Irish accent that just tops it all off. But yeah, I'm her number one fan, I think. I love her. So I think, yeah, we're so lucky on this side to have someone like that is so smart that when I will speak up, because, you know, if we didn't have that, we would be in a much worse position.
It's a good shout for next Hitchens. I sometimes wonder about Douglas Murray as another Hitchens.
No, I think Helen is it.
Helen is it.
I really, don't get me wrong, I'm a huge Douglas Murray fan. Like, I think he's really, really great. But
it's Helen.
Yeah, it's Helen.
Fair enough. People, please go and go into the links below and support Sall's, I mean, ridiculously expensive and important thing that's going on. It's really important. I sort of joke, I get quite flippant, but it's quite important. So please do help with that. And keep on watching this channel. Hit the like button and I'll have something right here for you to watch.